Hi, my name is Usman. I'm a photographer at Sonder Creative and staff writer at fstoppers.com, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the misconceptions in photography, mainly things around aperture, depth of field, crop factor, focal length and lens compression. Now these things tend to come up quite a lot when I'm having discussions online, especially when we're talking about medium format and some of the different sensor sizes. Now the claim generally goes that larger sensors produce shallower depth of field, so if you're shooting at f2.8 on full frame, it's the same as shooting at f1.8 on aps-c. Now this is completely not true. Sensor size does not affect your depth of field. For the most part, when you're seeing these demonstrations done online, what they're doing is changing one of the three things that actually change your depth of field, and that is focal length, aperture and your distance to your subject. So they change one of these three things and they confuse that as being a characteristic of the sensor. So to discuss and demonstrate my points, a friend and I went into Leeds and we were photographing a model, and we took a bunch of pictures at different focal lengths with different sensor sizes and different distances and so on, just to try and demonstrate how sensor size does not actually affect your depth of field. So looking at these first two images, we've got the Canon 80D on the left and the 5D Mark IV on the right. Both have been shot at 35mm, the 80D at f1.8, 5D Mark IV at f2.8. So most people will consider these to be equivalent apertures, but you'll notice how they're not equivalent. First thing is the exposure values are different. So when people say that the aperture is cropped when you're using a smaller sensor, that's not true. And the other thing is people talk about how larger sensors can gather more light. This is not true in the conventional sense because the exposure values are different depending on the aperture. A smaller sensor does not suddenly gather less light in terms of exposure. You can see how the 80D is more than a stop brighter than the 5D Mark IV. The other thing you'll see is that the depth of field is noticeably different. The brickwork on the back and the ground, the 80D is producing a shallower image in terms of depth of field compared to the 5D Mark IV. And here are another couple of images that we can look at, both shot in a similar kind of setup, both shot wide open, f1.8 and f2.8, and you can see that there are distinct differences. The exposure values are still different, the 80D is much brighter, and also the depth of field is shallower as well. So if we zoom in over here, looking at the some of the background, you can notice that the 80D is producing a much shallower depth of field compared to the full frame camera with the full frame lens. The only thing that the sensor size is actually affecting is the angle of view. If you're shooting at the same focal length, the larger sensor will always have a much wider field of view compared to a smaller sensor. But that's not the same as saying it's cropping the aperture or you're getting more light in the larger sensor. Now I can imagine a bunch of you are probably thinking that, well, you haven't matched the framings. If you match the framing, then you need to pull the 80D further away from your subject, and then that distance that you create is going to make it so that the depth of field between the 80D and the full frame image is going to be relatively similar. And that's kind of true. However, there are a couple of things to take into consideration. First thing, the exposure values are still going to be different, so crop factor doesn't affect the aperture in that sense. And the second thing is, when you pull the camera further away from your subject, it's still not the same image because your perspective has changed. And this ties right into compression. Now you've probably seen that clip online where someone's taken a series of pictures at different focal lengths and they use that as a way of demonstrating compression. But what they don't discuss is that between each shot, they've taken a step back. It's that distance that they create when they take that step further away from the subject. That's what's causing the compression, not the focal length. So if you do the same thing where you take a series of pictures of your subject without changing the distance, and you just change the focal length, you'll notice that there's no change in the compression. The reason for this is because compression has nothing to do with the lens and everything to do with your perspective or your distance to your subject. And this is why this method of teaching, although a lot of people will claim that this is a practical way of teaching, it's not practical, it's false, and it's the wrong way of going about it. And I'll explain why. If you're shooting just portraits with one subject, then maybe you can kind of get away with it, but you're still giving false information, but maybe you can get away with it. However, if you're shooting interiors, then you don't necessarily have just one subject and a blurry background. You've probably got a room full of different furniture, and some of the furniture is going to be closer to you, some of the furniture is going to be further away from you. Now, if you understand that compression is not a factor of your lens and it's a factor of how close or far you are from your distance, from your subject, then you'll understand that when you put that chair or that table really close to your lens, that's going to be severely distorted, and then those the furniture that's really far away from you is going to have compression. Then you're able to compose more effectively. You can change things around in the room, you can choose a different angle, you can do things more effectively because you understand how compression works. If you're shooting a landscape, for example, and you've got this big rock formation right in front of the lens, and you've got trees and mountains in the background, then if you understand how compression works, you'll know how to compose more effectively. So this method of teaching compression is inadequate, and it's the wrong way of going about it, and compression needs to be taught more effectively. And now a quick word from our sponsor for this video, and that is Skillshare. Skillshare is an incredible platform which gives you access to a huge number of classes and lessons that you can watch at your leisure. They cover a wide range of categories and subjects, and I really do recommend them. I know that this video is sponsored, but honestly, I think Skillshare is fantastic. I'm a firm believer in self-development. I think self-development is extremely important, and I've been using Skillshare for a little while now, and it's so incredibly useful. Personally for me, I've been brushing up on things like social media and Instagram, because my Instagram game is pretty much non-existent. So I've been watching a bunch of classes on Skillshare about Instagram and social media and how to improve on that. Also, I'm obviously watching videos about photography, but the thing that I'm really interested in at the moment is business and marketing. I think that a lot of photographers, including myself, we tend to get wrapped up with the gear and the creative side of things, which is obviously important, but we also need to learn about the business side of things if we're trying to turn this into something that can generate an income. And Skillshare is just such a great option for that. Skillshare have been kind enough to give me a link that I can offer to you guys, where the first 500 people that sign up will get their first 2 months for just 99 cents. I mean, I think that's amazing. Please do check out Skillshare. I'll leave the link below. Anyway, back to the video. Now, so far, the images that I've been showing you haven't been in perfect controlled scenarios, because we were outside. You know, if I might move a little bit or the subject might move slightly, the lighting might have been changing because we had some clouds as well in the sky. So it wasn't a perfect scenario in terms of demonstrating the points, but it still demonstrated what I was explaining. So to make sure that I'm covering all bases, I also took a bunch of pictures in a more controlled environment with flash, just to demonstrate what I'm discussing today. So we're going to go on to Lightroom and we're going to have a look at some images side by side. So here we have some more images opened up in Lightroom. I've got the Canon 5D Mark IV 24mm f2.8 on the left, the ATD with the same lens at 24mm f2.8 on the right. They were shot at exactly the same distance on a tripod using flash, so everything as controlled as possibly can be. And you can see that the depth of field, if I just zoom into this slightly, then you'll notice how the depth of field is identical in comparison. Even though this is a smaller sensor, the depth of field, the exposure, none of those things change when you're shooting from the same distance. Because remember, in controlled experiments, if you're trying to test whether one thing is causing something or not, you only change that one independent variable, which in this case is the sensor size. Now, when people talk about how larger sensors can gather more light, well, this is more light. The extra angle of view, that is light. That is the extra light that a larger sensor can gather. It's got nothing to do with exposure or per pixels. When people talk about larger pixels gathering more light, it's not that they capture more light for the exposure, it's that they're more effective at gathering the same light. Once again, at 70mm f2.8, we haven't changed the distance to the subject. All we've done is change the focal length, and the focal length is the same on both of them. You'll notice how the depth of field on both images is exactly the same. Look at the way that this is blurred out and look at the way that this is blurred out. Depth of field does not get changed by the sensor size. It's exactly the same as if you were to shoot with, let's say, a Sony a7R III, and I was basically using crop mode on the a7R III. So over here you can see that I'm using an 85mm f1.8, and all I've done is gone into crop mode, a Super 35 mode on the a7R III, and that's exactly the same as shooting with an aps-c body versus a full frame body. Last of all, let's look at equivalent apertures when you move the camera further away from the subject to match the framing. So I've tried to match the framing as much as I possibly can between both cameras, but the aspect ratios are slightly different. But you may notice a couple of things that are different. Although this is f4.5 and f2.8 and I've moved this camera back to match this, there are a few things that are different. Depth of field might be relatively similar, but the exposure values are very different. This is one stop darker than the 80D, even though we're shooting at the exact same settings and the exact same flash settings. And the second thing you may notice is that the Canon 80D has noticeably more compression in the image, even though we're shooting with the same focal length. So once again, compression has nothing to do with your focal length, it's got everything to do with your distance to subject. So what this means is that if you're shooting at the same focal length and trying to match the frame, then the smaller sensor will always have more compression in the image. So when people talk about how medium format cameras have better compression, that's obviously false. The smaller the sensor, the more compression you're going to get if you're trying to match the framing at any given focal length. If you pull the camera further away from your subject, you're not getting the same image. Perspective changes. So there you have it, that's some of the misconceptions in photography covered. I'm going to leave a link below in the description so that you can download the raw files and make sure that I'm not making stuff up, and you can check all the settings and so on as well. Also, just want to give a massive thank you to Skillshare. Thank you so much for sponsoring my video, really do appreciate it. And a huge thank you to you guys, because it's because of you guys that my channel is growing. I really do appreciate your support. It really does mean a lot that you're watching my video and taking that time, so thank you so much. Make sure you're following me on fstoppers.com and hit the like button, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.